Far, far away in the Highlands lays a magical land. A land filled with turquoise waterfalls, the greenest of grass and the purest and most untouched scenery the human eye could ever wish to see. A land where fairies have pools, glens and houses, and dinosaurs sketch their signatures into the rocks to make sure we know it's theirs. The old man allows us to roam around him, but his harsh peaked appearance reminds us that it is his land and always will be. One mustn't be fooled. Much like the apple to Adam, its beauty lures us in, only to ambush us with one of the most challenging landscapes in the country to conquer. Its magnetic powers coerce compasses into pointing off course. Its ever-changing biblical weather systems are some of the most harsh and challenging you will ever encounter. In the heart of Scotland's ancient land, where nature's might and fury stand, lies a ridge of rugged, fearsome might, where brave souls dare to test their flight. With trembling limbs and hearts aflame, they conquer fear, they own the name of legends born on Cuillin's height, where mortal souls touch raven's flight. Through mist and rain they find their way, each step a test, come what may. The ridge it bites with teeth of stone, yet daring hearts they journey on. The ridge it tests the human soul, yet in its grasp we find our goal. To conquer fears and doubts we face, and in a triumph find our grace. For in each step, in every scar, we find out who we truly are, and in nature's crucible we are tried, upon your slopes where heroes bide. The land is the Isle of Skye, the land is the Black Cuillin, the land is the ridge. I try as much as possible to take the scenic route to Skye. It's just incredible scenery from start to finish, really. The mountains leading up to it, the atmosphere, the location is just phenomenal. That is, of course, if you get the weather. If you don't, you're probably not seeing anything, unfortunately, but that's the nature of the beast, and Skye is renowned for its horrendous weather. It is called the Misty Isle, and most of the times I've been on Skye, I would say the weather has been awful. I've done speed traverses or attempted and waited about for weeks and weeks and not even had a good weather day. So Skye is a different beast to the rest of the UK. It's its own little climate. Skye is regarded as the pinnacle of mountaineering in the country. It's unrivaled in terms of its mountains. It's probably the closest thing we have to alpinism. They are just spectacular mountains, and all Munro baggers will know that because it's probably the only set of hills that people generally get guides for, because you do need ropes and guides to climb them, or most people will. They are just phenomenal hills, but they come with dangers. They are extremely dangerous. Not just because of the technical climbing and scrambling, but the weather systems on Skye are horrendous. The weather can come in quickly, and it just makes a Cuillin Traverse almost impossible. think one of the main reasons Skye is so special for a lot of people and why so many people go to it is the landscape. It's just phenomenal. It's majestic and just so varied. You've got glens and turquoise waterfalls, but then you've also got nice rolling hills, and then obviously the Cuillins sat at the ocean with their spiked appearance, very like the Alps, probably the closest thing to the Alps that the UK has. And the geology of it is just, it's always interested me as to why they're shaped,
Okay, so they formed 61 million years ago, and that was at a time period where Scotland was situated where Iceland is now, or just around about that area. So you had like the opening of the Atlantic Ocean at this point, where the mid-oceanic ridge formed in the North Atlantic and South Atlantic Oceans. So at one point, like, the UK and Scotland was joined together with America and Greenland, and they were all combined as a supercontinent, right, known as Pangaea. Now at this point, like, you had a lot of rifting going on, like, which allowed magma to seep through the crust. Like, now that magma forms as a partial melt of the mantle, and because it's buoyant, it's lighter than the surrounding crust. It wants to reach the surface, so it'll do what it can do to get to the surface. So as it's moving through, like, the crust, it can sometimes crystallise within the crust, which is known as an intrusive igneous rock, an intrusive volcanic rock. But if it reaches the surface, it's known as an extrusive volcanic rock, and this is when it's called a lava. So it's magma when it's in the ground, in the crust, and then it's a lava when it's outside, like coming out of the crust, which is what you can see in Iceland happening today. These processes are ongoing today in Iceland, and that's what Scotland used to look like. The west coast of Scotland was full of these fissures that would open up randomly and spew out this lava. This magma sat within the crust and crystallised very slowly over time, which gives the Cuillins that coarse-grained gabbro rock which you see today. And what's happened is, like, erosion's taking place, like, you've had glaciers cut through valleys over, like, back and forth. Like, there's been interglacial periods over the last, like, God knows how many hundreds of thousands of years. Like, you've had, like, ice sheets, like ice ages back and forth, which have caused, like, erosion of this 2 kilometres worth of rock that used to sit on top of it.
I'd say one of the worst parts to the whole traverse is probably the walk-in. It is just an absolute slog. It's a bog fest, and it's mentally testing. It's just miles and miles of wet, boggy ground to get to the start point. And if you add into that you've got all your heavy kit with you, you're gonna have wet weather kit, bivvy kit, your food, your water, it's a tough outing to the start. And then you've obviously got a full traverse to do after that. For a full traverse, it normally takes between, I'd say on average, a day to 2 days to do, with a bivvy generally somewhere in the middle around the Andorra's Gap. It's a normal way to do a traverse. If you're going for a 1 day traverse in, then you go light and you don't bivvy, and you just need to push on. The full Cuillin Traverse itself is around about 12 kilometres on the ridge. That's from start point to finish. That's not including the walk in and the walk out, which can take combined about 6 hours. It's not an easy undertaking at all. If you add to that there's almost 4 kilometres of ascent on the full ridge. That ascent is made up of, on average, probably about grade 2 scrambling. There's some severe, moderate and very severe rock climbing grades in there. When you get to the start, you've got to make your decision whether or not that you're going to continue on or not. We had particularly bad weather on this ascent here, and we decided to push on. The forecast was to clear up, so we took the risk, and I'm sure you'll see it pays off. The Cuillin in wet weather can be a very dangerous place. It's got a mixture of basalt and a mixture of gabbro. Gabbro is great to climb on, it's really grippy, but the basalt is very slidey, which makes it pretty dangerous to be climbing in these conditions that you can see here. In conditions like this, roping up is almost something that you have to do. It just means that you're not taking any silly risks, and it just makes things really safe. But things can dry up really quickly on the Cuillin, and before you know it, the sun can be out and the rock can start to dry. I think one of the most tiring things about doing the Cuillin Traverse isn't actually the climbing itself, it's the remaining focused and remaining alert, and your concentration on where your feet are going, where your gear, your rope, and navigationally as well. The ridge isn't a straight ridge, it's a very complicated mound of rock that you take the wrong way and you end up in some seriously difficult positions. But that's why it's very important to make use of the bivvy shelters that are there for food and drink stops, and it's also important to have maybe done a water drop or a food drop depending on how long you think you're going to be up there, or maybe a couple of days beforehand. It seems to be the common thing to do. On this traverse, it was good timing for us that the weather started to clear up as we got nearer to the middle, which is where the in-pin is, but we'll come to that near the end of this film. As we approached the end, the blue skies opened just in time. That Gabbro dried off really well, and it just made for some extremely good climbing. Really good handholds, footholds, and it just becomes good fun as soon as the weather dries up and you get the views back to where you've come. It's just a phenomenal experience, but good days on the Cuillin are very few and very far between. And before you know it, you're running off of Brook na Freeth with Sgurr Alasdair in the background, and you're making your way onto West Ridge, which is your final kind of tough bit of the traverse before you pull yourself up onto the top of West Ridge, and that's you onto Sgurr Alasdair, which is the last munro of the Cuillin Traverse, and that's it. You start making your way back down after that, and straight to the pub or bed, depending how you're feeling. Now, as I said earlier, the most famous part, and probably the most thrilling part of the whole Ridge Traverse for most people, is the in-pin, the Inaccessible Pinnacle. It's regarded as the hardest munro in Scotland, and it's probably the only one you actually need rock climbing experience for, because you're probably going to want to use ropes, and you're probably going to have to abseil off the other side of it. The east ridge of the Inaccessible Pinnacle is a moderate grade rock climb. It's 65 metres and some real exposure either side of that. It's generally done in a couple of pitches, and then when you get to the top, you're going to abseil off the other side of it down to the bottom, and it's a phenomenal experience to be perched on the top of the in-pin, because it's essentially a fin of rock standing on top of the Cuillin Ridge. It's a phenomenal place to be, and it's a good bit of fun. It's got to be one of the best munros to climb in Scotland. I think most people would agree with that. I think the Cuillin Traverse is microcosmic of the mountains and the challenges that we face in the hills in Scotland. It's kind of it's the final challenge. It puts all your skills you've learned over the years trying to conquer the mountains in Scotland, and it's the final test. You know, everything there wants to stop you, everything there wants you not to succeed on that mountain range, between the weather, the terrain, the difficulty of the climbing, the mental and the physical challenge, as well as having to battle lack of water, lack of food. It is just a tremendous mountaineering test, and one that is worthy of the title of one of the hardest in the country, and I absolutely love it.